Good afternoon, guys. My name is Justin Colantonio. Thanks for coming to my class, Cybersecurity 101. All right, a little bit about me. I'm a 25-year IT professional that's worked in corporate, government, and now has owned my own MSSP for the last 20 years. We're based out of Northeast Philadelphia. I have the same business partner for all 20 years. We haven't killed each other yet. I have a copy of my book I co-authored with a few other people 2 years ago. I'm a cyber insurance expert when it comes to understanding the risk and the management of the new policies that are coming out. Before getting into IT, though, I was an accountant, so I'm a big numbers guy, and you'll see that in my presentation because I'm a big statistics type of person. I live in South Jersey with my 2 children and my wife, my son Luca, and my daughter Megan. And I coach him in baseball. Dan will find out if he was here that I'm average at golf. I'm trying to get better. But the big thing is I'm always trying to learn. I'm very much listening to podcasts, audiobooks. I'm a big Mike Michalowicz fan. Good to Great is an excellent, excellent book that Bruce talked about earlier. I've read that at least twice. It really drives me to be able to be a good leader for my team, because as we grow, the employees' requirements and needs and how to be a leader change, especially when you're a tech. I'm not trained to be a manager or anything like that. So constant education is always good for me. So now we'll actually get into the presentation. So what is cybersecurity? It's basically being protected against the criminal or unauthorized use of electronic data or the measures to achieve this. And that last part is where most of us fall, is what are we doing to prevent our businesses or our customers' businesses from an attack, okay? So people tell me all the time, cybersecurity is fake. I really don't need to do it. No one's gonna come after me. That is so false. It was especially after the pandemic, people were a little skeptical. Today, it is 100% the truth. Companies are going under. I literally just talked to an attorney 2 weeks ago from a lawsuit that a financial firm got breached and literally went out of business. They were doing $40 million a year, and in 18 months had to close because they had a cyber incident. And they're trying to go after their IT company right now, actually, and that's why I was brought in. Potentially, I'm still talking and all that. So it is real. So here are some of the statistics. Like I said, I'm a numbers guy. So how do I talk to my clients and how do I tell them, hey, this stuff is real? So the biggest one is that second one. 94% of all attacks start with email, okay? The phishing emails are the #1 area. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt. I'd rather be fishing, okay? That all attacks start from email and originate. The companies that get actually targeted are very, very far and few between. The internet uses bots to actually find vulnerabilities in networks. So we all pay Google to advertise our businesses. By a show of hands, how many people do AdWords with Google for SEO? I'm assuming most of us. No? You need to start, okay? If you guys are in low voltage, it's a great Google AdWords. I get a ton of business from it. The pay-per-click is very, very cheap. Something to definitely look into. But Google basically says, hey, I'm gonna use my bot to get you advertising and get you out on the internet. However, the bad guys do the same thing, okay? So once they find that, hey, I have a vulnerable source, or hey, someone's gonna click my fake email, I'm then gonna try to steal their credentials. So that's where 61% of those attacks actually start. Once I'm in the network, these guys are very, very sleuth. They typically average between 120 days to 180 days before they do anything. They want to learn when you're open, when you're closed, when your team's birthdays are, when are you not sending emails. They monitor all this because they want to know when the right time to attack is, okay? And then 60% of all businesses within 6 months of a breach go under, okay? If you have to send a letter to your customers that I lost your social security number, all your medical records, your financial data, more than likely when that contract comes up the next time, your customers are going to probably shop you, okay? So it's very, very important for a business owner to focus on cybersecurity. And I know I hear all the time, it's so expensive. It's so time consuming. It does take some effort, but it's not a fortune. And I can show you how as we go through this. All right, here's, again, more statistics. 1 in every 10 organizations worldwide had encountered some sort of cyber event in 2023. It was up 33% from the previous year, okay, when only 1 of every 13 organizations received some sort of ransomware or cyber attack. So this is obviously growing, and it's happening more and more. If anything, these statistics are just going to continue to increase because this is going to be a $1 trillion a year business within the next 5 years. So lots and lots of money here if you want to be a bad guy. All right, just some more, again, just proving the validity that this is real and that I'm not just selling on fear. I know you guys called my speech last year Fright Fest, okay? But it is true and it is real, and that's what we're trying to show our customers and show people that, hey, we're not doing this for fun. It's happening day in and day out, and the statistics are starting to prove it. Okay, so from a technology aspect, how does cyber impact our world? So pre-pandemic, if you look, we have the old world of IT. Everybody sat in cubes, chatted with everybody. Everything was hardwired. We didn't have 5G and 4G and Rob with 50 antennas and PEP links and all those kind of things that he was setting up yesterday. Everything was hardwired, back to switches. We controlled it. We owned it. We managed it. Now, that world is completely different. Everybody wants to work virtual. You want to work at the beach. Look, I do it, okay? I love going into my in-law shore house and spending a weekend there and doing my work from a remote location. Employees don't want to come back. However, that poses a big risk from an IT perspective because now our perimeter or our barrier has grown exponentially. So again, here are kind of some of the pieces that we had. So previously, in the old world, everything the company owned. We bought desktop towers, desktop laptops, but the company owned them, okay? All our data was stored in server farms. It all went back to one repository. We owned it, we managed it, we saw it, we could touch it, okay? The applications that we had were developed either in-house or we bought some box software, okay? They're not stored in clouds or things like that. We had big server farms. When I worked at the police department, we had a room of about this size where we had hundreds of servers, from the fingerprinting software to the murder software. I mean, you name it, there was a software for it, and it had to be on an individual server. There was no virtualization, so I would look at those servers and they were barely touched, but we had to have an independent because software A didn't play with software B. And everything was hardwired. There was no such thing as wireless when I started in IT. And your viruses were more nuisances than they were anything. You couldn't go to a certain website, machine would run, you get a pop-up, things like that. However, today's a completely new world, okay, that we have to attack. Everybody wants a BYOD. Let's bring your own device. I don't want to use the company-issued laptop. You give me a Windows PC. I'm a Mac guy. I don't want to do my job on that. Okay, how do I protect that? My data is everywhere. So I might have data at Office 365, I might have some at Azure, I might have some at Google. So maybe we use Salesforce and my data for customers is at Salesforce. So all my data is scattered all over the world and all over the internet. How do I protect it? Okay, virtualization has helped, okay, revolutionize the industry so that way we can reduce our carbon footprint, reduce our number of servers, but we're now commingling technology together in order to reduce hardware costs. We are now global, wireless. I mean, every one of us, the minute we got into the hotel, connected to the corporate Wi-Fi of the hotel, the conference center, things like that. So now we have to protect devices that we don't even manage coming onto our networks. Our people are mobile. Most of my guys are even hybrid. They're in 2, maybe 3 days a week if I'm lucky. So I have to protect their home networks, things like that. And the viruses today are no more just basic viruses, we're actually getting what we call ransomware, which is basically software that will take over your network and basically cripple it down to the point where they say, pay me or you don't get your data back, okay? I've been involved in a few cases with ransomware. Sometimes we're lucky we can just help a customer restore. I've had to pay the ransom 10 times, okay? I keep Bitcoin on my balance sheet. My attorney hates me for it and my accountant, but we have to help our customers with incident response. Literally 2 months ago, I had to help a negotiation. The ransom, $77,000. We got it down to 28, okay? When they ask for certain things, you send them type of data, things like that. These ransoms can be negotiated as part of an incident response program, but we ended up having to pay still to get that data back because they didn't have backups or they touched the backups. So even though we were able to negotiate down, we still ultimately had to pay the bad guys, which sucks. Okay? So people are like, I'll just move my business to the cloud. Okay? I just can't, I don't want to deal with technology. I don't want to be safe. We've been using clouds forever and people just don't know it. And 82% of all attacks happen in the cloud. AOL, we've been using their emails since I've been a kid. That's a cloud. It's just a different type of cloud. There's public clouds that your main three are Azure, AWS, and Google Platform. However, there's many businesses that run private clouds. And the most recent big one that had big issues was Rackspace. We had customers that basically didn't want to move to Office 365, hated Microsoft, hated Google. They're too big. I don't want to deal with big players. And Rackspace had one of the largest email breaches ever. They basically had to shut the business down. I had clients that we had to move their email, start new email. It took them 4.5 months before we actually got the email back. That was all in the archive, that they had to restore from backup and things. It took them 4.5 months. Well, I had customers freaking out. And then you have multiple environments. I have clients that have data in Google, data in Azure, data in AWS, mixing. So just because it's in the cloud means you still have to manage it, okay? All you're doing is offshooting just some of the technology spend to someone else, but it's still ultimately your responsibility as an IT person or a consultant to make sure that that data that you're protecting is backed up, and you can't trust the big guys to do it for you. We back up Microsoft all the time. All right, so this is kind of one of those food for thought questions. So if I came to you and said, and I'd like a show of hands, if I took 100 grand out of your bank account and the insurance company says, I won't pay you back, how does that affect your business? Would it put you under? Would you be financially strapped? Because this is typical of what you would see today. You might get your CFO wire transfers and falls for a phishing email, okay? Unless you got cyber insurance, which we'll talk about later, that 100 grand's gone. The FBI, I've been to some of their seminars, say that if a mortgage transaction happens that's fraudulent, so let's say it's $200,000 mortgage close with title, within 4 hours, that 200 grand hits 6 different people. And then within 24 hours, it's offshored and already converted to Bitcoin, okay? So if someone does something in your business that's fraudulent, falls for an email, falls for a scam, there's a likelihood you might not get it back. So this is why I'm saying is hey, take this stuff seriously. Again, but I'm too small. No one wants me. No one has any data. To be honest, that's wrong due to the fact that you're the easier targets. They know the government has massive security. They know large corporations, okay? My wife works for the Campbell Soup Corporation. They have a huge team of security experts. For them to get through their technology is going to be a lot harder. I didn't want to travel with it, but when I do some of these presentations locally, I have an old rusted club from your car from the 1990s, if you all remember that thing, okay? And I bought it off eBay. It's full of rust. It's beautiful. I love pulling out of a brown paper bag. Their go-to-market strategy wasn't that your car wasn't going to get stolen. It was supposed to be a deterrent, okay? And that's the whole part about technology when it comes to being a victim of a cyber attack is you don't want to be the obvious guy. They want the easy targets, okay? So again, no one's too small. Small businesses are very, very targetable, but you're too small to be on the news, okay? People think, oh, I don't hear about small businesses because they don't care. Today, the FBI will not get involved in a cyber event if it's less than $20 million, okay? So you can't, like, call your congressman, call your police officer. They're gonna be like, yeah, I could care less. Deal with it, figure it out, okay? They have more important fish to fry. It's just not what they wanna do. All right, so how are the hackers today doing it? Okay, I guess that's the big question. I'm just checking time here, because I don't wanna get yelled at by Ray. All right, so they do it a variety of different ways. So the first thing they do is they try to work their way in using social engineering. So this is basically where I'm finding ways to use what you guys like as a way to get into your business. So I use social media, but I'm very, very limited on it and what I post, because I don't want them to know that my wife likes Disney or I like golf or whatever that looks like, because they're gonna try to use that against me in a social engineering campaign. The more information they can gather, they look at your business's LinkedIn, they look at stuff. That's what they're gonna start targeting. So if you're in the construction world, they're gonna write phishing emails about RFPs. If we're in the low voltage world, they might talk about fiber optics and things like that. So having a digital footprint's important from parties and things like that, but be very, very careful, because that's what they're using to gather intel. They're very, very smart, okay? Then they typically try to get in via phishing email, and then they're gonna go to the dark web. So the dark web is an area of the internet where us good guys hang out and watch, but that's where the bad guys go and sell information. So I could go through a certain type of browser that I use on a different laptop and go buy a list of 100 passwords for 50 cents. They might be good, they might be bad, I don't know, okay? And it's my job to then go build an AI algorithm against that to go see if they're good. However, once they figure out, but that's like a small percentage. The key is they want to figure out what you're using, and they can see that most people use the same passwords over and over and over and over again. So it leads to, hey, I already have half of that password. Okay, they use the dog's name for everything. So if I can just take the dog's name and add a whole bunch of AI behind it, there's a good chance that I can get in using a brute force attack. Again, Trojans are basically files that people install, get in, that's a back door for them, where they put a piece of software on your laptop, all it does is report home. Again, 120 days, they're just gathering intel. They're not trying to do anything until they know that they got you. All right, now, people think, oh, it's Justin with a hoodie on in his basement doing this. Not anymore. It used to be the case. This is the new fangled version of organized crime. I mean, this is literally how it's being done. There are corporate offices. They have Sally's birthday party, okay, at lunchtime. They just go back to doing hacking versus whatever normal business that they would have. They set company culture, and that company is to steal your data, okay? I can't tell you how many times that during an incident response or paying a ransomware, I've had to go to them for customer service. And guess what? They give it to me, okay? Because they know if I did something and I paid them and they didn't deliver, I'm gonna go on the dark web and say, hey, so-and-so organization doesn't follow through on their promises. And they basically get crippled. So it's funny, it's sad, but literally they have the same business models that we do as here in the United States. All right, so I have backups. Why do I need to pay them? And people say that to me all the time. And that used to be the case. However, now we're getting into this is the newfangled piece of cybersecurity, is now business owners are getting extorted. So, hey, I know you have a great IT team. That's fine. I'll restore all my data. I'm not gonna pay no ransom. That's fine. So now they've come up with a new way to extort business owners. They are basically saying, hey, I've been in your system for the last 120 days. I've been stealing all your customers' information. I've been stealing all your accounting information and all the stuff that makes your business the best business in the world, okay? If you don't pay me, I'm gonna sell it to your competition. So, hey, Theron, I got your data. I'm gonna go sell it to Graybar. That hurt you? Okay? That kind of stuff is what happens. And that's where they're trying to get paid because they know companies like ours that are protecting our businesses, but if we don't know they're in there, they have access to data. There was a medical firm that I had to deal with about 18 months ago that their in-house IT company, they got a ransomware, their in-house IT company came in, got notified of it, but restored all the data and restored all the data on top of the data that was encrypted. The problem was the ransom clearly stated when I got on site to do the incident response from the insurance company, stated, we've been in your system, we have all your medical records, okay? Problem was the IT company restored over top of it. So I couldn't prove or deny that those files were touched. So we had to make sure and talk to the insurance company about, hey, we have to go with the intention that, yeah, these guys are telling the truth and we have to play their game and pay with them. One of the big new areas is they're attacking supply chain because they're the most likely to pay right now. So if they're attacking your local municipalities, your electric companies, your water department, Bucks County 911 just got hit. It was pretty bad. They were down for about 6.5 weeks to get it fully restored. There was no life loss issues, but they couldn't send transmissions from the dispatcher at 911 to the MDT. Everything had to be done over radio. So it wasn't horrible, but still a slowdown in how we operate. And they had to still pay the ransom to get their data back on top of that. So they're going after supply chain because they know that everybody else down the line now needs to have that. We all are impacted and we're gonna all freak out if we can't get trash collection or plumbing done, things like that. All right, so as a business owner, do you need cybersecurity? By a show of hands, anybody a gambler? Either sports, cards, anything fun? Yeah, a few of you? Okay. I am. You can see my jacket, okay? I got a bunch of aces and cool stuff in there because I do like to gamble, but I don't gamble in my business. That's one thing I won't do, okay? And I make sure my business is protected with every level of cybersecurity. So one of the pros of doing cybersecurity for your business is there's a high probability that you will not get breached. Again, as I said earlier, the hackers want easy targets. They don't want companies with complex systems. It's not worth their time because by the time they get in, they could have had 5 others in the same time, okay? You're gonna have smart staff. So training your staff on phishing campaigns and things like that, they're gonna be able to pick up on some of those techniques and things that they're trying to do to get in. Your clients are happy, and I don't see this enough in my opinion. Use your cybersecurity protocols and your cybersecurity hygiene as a marketing piece, especially if you're in a compliance level field. Say, hey, we take your stuff seriously. We take your data, okay? We know what we're doing with it. Hey, if you give it to me, it's gonna be protected. That gives that customer a warm and fuzzy feeling, okay? And it doesn't cost as much as you think. Now, you could play the 2-6 offsuit hand, okay, against my 4 aces, if you like, okay? And let's gamble, okay? Hey, what's the worst thing that can happen? I go under, okay? Depending on your type of entity, you might get sued, you might not. The negative is that it's constantly changing, so you have to educate yourself, or you need a partner to constantly be giving you information about what's going on in the industry. The industry is changing a lot now by insurance. Cyber insurance is rapidly changing, and I'll get to a slide or two in that in a little bit. And unfortunately, it's now a forever cost to run your business. Heavy mic. All right, so what are some common cybersecurity services? So I've kind of broken them down into 3 different categories, okay? Based on, and we'll elaborate into each one. So there's some basic things you can do. If you own a really micro business or just some small businesses, I can give you some simple tactics just to make yourself not obvious. If you're a bigger or medium-sized business, we can go to the middle ground. And then if you have to follow the advanced stuff, there's services out there that offer that. So in the basic side, The first thing we want to do in today's market, and it's not very expensive, is get something called EDR, okay? Stands for Endpoint Detection and Response. This is the new version of antivirus. So we've all heard about antivirus since the early 1990s, 80s, okay? The problem with antivirus is it's only as smart as what you tell it. So it's this ever-evolving encyclopedia dictionary of data, okay? But if I get something new today on my system and it doesn't know about it, it's going to think it's okay. So what endpoint detection and response does is it looks and monitors your activity and trends on what you do day in and day out. So a good example of this is I had an accounting firm copying a whole bunch of files onto a flash drive, and the EDR caught it because they moved more data than their typical data amount. We called them and said, hey, something's up. And they're like, oh yeah, sorry, we're under subpoena and we have to like give all these tax returns to our attorney for a lawsuit. But they were super impressed that we were able to pick up on that. And we didn't do it, the AI software did it, but we look like heroes, okay? The next thing you can do is make sure you have multiple copies of your data, okay? A USB hard drive is not good enough, okay? Insurance today, if you're running a business that has cyber, they want to follow a 3-2-1 process. So that means they want 3 copies of your data, okay? At least 2 different copies on 2 different types of media, and 1 off-site, immutable from your network. What that means is there's no connectivity between your corporate office and the cloud or wherever you're sending it to. So that way the bad guys can't touch it, okay? And then the last thing, which is probably the most important thing, is put MFA, multi-factor authentication. If you value something, put MFA on it. So if it's your Facebook account, your Instagram, okay, your bank account, your Amazon account, if you value your data or what you have, add some layer of MFA to it. This is a recent statistic that Microsoft released themselves, that there's 30 million brute force attempts. That means where people are trying to break in a day on your email, okay? So, and Microsoft does nothing to do with it. Unless you pay the premium service, you can't stop brute force attempts. It's just what they do. So it's crazy. So if you have a little bit more, bigger staff and you want to do some stuff, you can go out and get yourself a SOC, which is basically a company that monitors your network when I'm asleep. And they have the kill switch. So if they start to see weird activity on a computer, they start to see ransomware, they have literally the ability to cut down your business and shut it off. You can set your employees up with some training. We can check the internet for passwords to see if anybody's password's being sold on the internet. And then you can go out and get a password manager. They're $3, $4 a month. And then you can make encrypted passwords that are very difficult. Sometimes I know it's annoying every time I use one and it's like, I got to log into this thing again. But it does save your butt because they're not going to be able to do it. There's some articles on the internet that show that if you have a 12-character password with at least 2 symbols, uppercase, lowercase, and a number, it will take basically my lifetime, my children's lifetime, and their children's lifetime before they even get close to cracking it, okay? That's why 12, when you hear a lot of financial sites requiring 12, because that's the new algorithm number in what they could do in a brute force attempt. That's if they don't know anything. And then if you're really big and you need government level work, you need compliance, you can get yourself a certification. TTR is actually working on theirs. We hope to have it by the end of the middle of next year. That's an ISO 27001 certification. That's basically meaning you follow certain policies and procedures relating to tech. If you work with the federal government, if you do anything with the government or a subsidiary of the government, you have to comply with NIST 181. You start building policies within your business. So that could be acceptable use. Hey, I give you this laptop. You can't have your kid play Fortnite on it. This is your work laptop, okay? And this is what we can do to monitor it. And that's actually a law federally that if you don't have an acceptable use policy in your handbook, you can't do certain level of monitoring. You build a disaster recovery and business continuity plan. And then what we've been doing a lot of recently is incident response. This is where we test are cybersecurity protocols against a real life breach. So like my children go to school, they have fire drills. This is a modern version of a fire drill related to technology. And then you can add CISO services, and we can sign off on your insurance and things like that. All right, so how do I know what's right for me? So the big questions you ask is to yourself, do I have any statutes I gotta follow? So do I have to follow the FTC? So this is something brand new as of December of last year. If you do anything with a financial piece of data, so car dealerships, credit unions, you must now file with the Federal Trade Commission and follow their new cybersecurity laws. That came out in December of last year. So accountants even, if you have over, I think it's 60 customers, there's a certain threshold, you have to follow FTC. If you're a medical practice and you have to follow HIPAA, then you have to choose what level does those companies or those industries tell me to do. If I'm not following that, what is the value of the data that falls into the wrong hands? So if my data gets out there, my customer base, my order entry system, what is the value of that? And that hopefully will tell you what system. Typically, what does a 3-day, 5-day business interruption look like? So what does it cost you to run your company for 3 or 5 days with no data? Because I gotta inspect it all, I gotta scan it, I gotta test it, and depending on the size, it could even be longer. And then if I have cyber insurance, what does that do for me? What does that require me to have? Because that's a big piece also, because that's changing. Okay, and I'll talk about that now. So, what's driving what I do in my company and for my clients every day is this. So, cyber insurance in the pre-pandemic world was literally the end of trading places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, okay? They were selling it like frozen orange juice concentrate. Hey, anybody want it? Give it to me, okay? And they were selling $1 million policies for peanuts, okay? Guess what happened after the pandemic? The insurance companies got burned, okay? So what they ended up having to do is they had to hire a bunch of cyber guys to rewrite their rules and understand their limits. And how do I do that? So the first thing you want to understand is the insurance companies will offer you $1 million policy today, a $2 million policy, a $5 million policy. However, they're getting very smart and creating all these little sublimits, okay? So make sure if you're going to get an application, make sure you work with your local broker or someone who understands cyber, or come and I'll give you my card at the end and I'll be happy to chat with you. Because they're writing clauses in where, yeah, you have $1 million, but we only give you $50,000 if I have to pay a ransom, and only $20,000 if they did a wire fraud. So they wired $100,000 out, but you're only getting insurance for 20 grand. Okay, even though you have $1 million policy. They're getting really smart because they're insurance companies. That's what they do. They're in the business to make money. And screw us end users, okay? I'm gonna talk about the forms in a second, but you gotta make sure you fill them out because they're starting to deny claims. This is the big thing that happened in the last 18 months, where we're starting to see if you lie on those applications or fill them out incorrectly, they're gonna say, hey, we're not paying that claim. You told us you had multi-factor authentication and everything, and we came in and did an analysis and you didn't. We're not paying that ransom. We're not paying that your business interruption. And that's what's gonna lead you to go out of business. And then you gotta be careful of, what do my clients require, okay? I remember Pierce and I talking, he had a customer once that wanted a big policy, okay? But I have to ask them, why am I being asked to give you this data? I'm not holding anything. Some companies have a whole risk management team and you have to fight through that. But be very careful because a lot of clients today, especially if you're dealing with healthcare, if you're dealing with financial firms, they're gonna wanna make sure that anybody they give data to is insured and protected. All right, so this is one of my favorite slides. So about 3 years ago, the average cyber application was about 3 pages. It asked you questions about how long your contracts were, what's your portion of revenue, do you have antivirus, some basic, like half of it wasn't even IT, okay? Okay, do you have network segmentation in place? Do you have any standards? Do you take credit cards? Little things like that. Now, the typical application that we see is anywhere from 7 to 11 pages. This was the most recent, the slide I literally redid before I came. This was the most portion of the last traveler's application that we just got for one of our, what do they do? Immigration law firms. They just got their renewal, so we're helping them with that right now. So if you haven't filled out one in a while, guess what? They're going to take a lot longer to take than they used to, okay? What happens if they're not 100% accurate? This is what I said earlier. They can start denying claims. So the one thing that my company and I have done is, and the questions are very gray and very vague. So we'll write questions back to the underwriter, or I'll say, see appendix. So let's say, for example, one of the questions is, do you have multi-factor authentication on all key applications? Okay, pretty easy, pretty straightforward question, right? But let's say you have 15 key applications. You got an inventory management system, you got an email system, you got an accounting system, but you have MFA on 14 of those, okay? But you don't have it on one, but you have some workarounds in place, or you have something like that. If I put no, I'm gonna get thrown into the pile with the clowns who have no cybersecurity. But if I say yes, guess what? I'm technically lying, okay? So what we've done, and it's worked really well for us, is cross that out. Say, see appendix. And I'll explain the technical knowledge that I've done and what we're doing to help our customers not get pigeonholed into that. And I have a leg to stand on that says, hey, we told you this wasn't covered, or we have this workaround in place, because that's what they're trying to do, okay? And then what happens if the insurer says you failed to maintain your business to acceptable standards? That's what's happening today, is these applications, they're trying to insure the good people, but screw over the rest. All right, so now, this was my talk last year. This year, the audience was gonna be a little different, so I went more generic. So how do we, as integrators of technology, so we're installing access control, we're doing camera systems, IoT, so Dave, if he was here, we installed Sonos, okay? How do I install my technology that I just sold my customers into a network that I either don't know or don't manage? So I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. All right, so the first thing is you wanna have a conversation very early on with your customer about technology and how it's gonna integrate into your system, okay? So if you talk to your customer, hey, who's your IT guy? I don't have one, okay? Then the first thing I would do is have a conversation and say, hey, I'm plugging something into your network that's gonna be exposed to the internet, okay? It's an IoT device. What can I do to help maintain it? And their answer is gonna be, I don't know, I'm not an IT guy. Then my response would be send an email to that owner or make them sign some kind of liability waiver that says, hey, I'm taking no ownership of this. I am just plugging the DVR into the system that you told me to, because you paid me to do it, okay? You don't want someone like myself coming in and finding that a breach was occurred because you installed XYZ system and they didn't know it was set up that way. This port was open in their firewall. So here is a screenshot of a Sonic wall that we did about 12 months ago for a customer that is opening a kind of a gym membership business for musicians. So they have like, you can go in and do your own, like you rent rooms and you get a podcast room. You can rent room and lay down your next track, okay? And then upload it to wherever you want. It's a pretty cool business model. It's in downtown Philly. The musicians love it. They have a big stage. You can rent out space. So how do I come in and protect their network, okay? So I broke it down, and Rob and Ryan, who's not here, actually have a class on, or supposed to have a class, on VLANing, okay? So VLANing is basically segmenting your networks into smaller micro segments that basically say this piece of equipment can only do this. So as you can see, I created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different VLANs for this customer. And each one of them is segmented accordingly based on permissions. So I have the management network, which also can talk to the corporate network. So the management network is all our switches, routers, firewalls, hubs, anything that the company owns. Then I created the management network, which is basically the the internal infrastructure, their laptops, their computers, things like that that plug in. I then created a members Wi-Fi. So if you're a member and pay the gym membership, you're gonna get access to the internet, but you can see I labeled that zone as guest. So that's an isolated network. The cafe, because they take credit cards, that anybody who takes credit cards has to fall under what they call PCI compliance. That has to be a dedicated network. That basically no one can sniff that network and read credit card data as it goes across, okay? Each of the rooms have their own stuff. I have an IoT, they have a print network, and then they had a phone system internally for VoIP that they added after they moved in. Each one of them is isolated. Now, we manage this for them. We didn't do their door control. We didn't do their cameras. We were not hired for that. Each one of them falls under that IoT. So that's where I have those guys play each other, okay? And each one is locked down. I gave them individual IP addresses. They have to follow my rules to plug into my network that I'm managing day in and day out, if I'm gonna put my business on liability up there. So again, installers beware. You don't wanna be the guy who just plugs in, okay, and deal with it later. Think before you plug is just the best thing I can give you guys, and just make sure that if you're gonna plug something in, that you have it documented, that you can prove that you had a conversation about it, because that's your only leverage. Otherwise, it's he said, she said against me, the IT forensic guy that comes in after the fact when something goes wrong. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. I'm open for Q&A. I am good with 10 minutes, right on point. Couldn't do that better. I am here to answer anything you guys want. Thank you.